There's more than one way to skin a cat. Some election officials in New Hampshire, Michigan, Arizona, who don't like Trump and apparently fearing they might not be able to beat him in the polling booth, have a new idea. They're seeking to disqualify Trump from the 2024 election. Their plan? They believe they can use Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment. That section states that an elected official is not eligible to assume public office if that person, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States or had given aid or comfort to enemies of the United States unless they're granted amnesty by a two-thirds vote of Congress. Now, these election officials insist Trump's actions on January 6 meet this disqualification criteria. Meanwhile, and this might surprise you, yesterday, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which is not a fan of Trump, published an editorial against banning Trump from the ballots on constitutional grounds. Their editorial reads in part, "The consequences of the 14th Amendment panic are likely to be worse for democracy and its institutions than trusting voters in 234 years of sturdy constitutional example." And of course, yesterday, Trump responded to the efforts by election officials in key states, saying on Truth Social, "Almost all legal scholars have voiced opinions that the 14th Amendment has no legal basis or standing relative to the upcoming 2024 presidential election. Like election interference, it's just another trick being used by the radical left, communists, Marxists, and fascists to again steal an election that their candidate, the worst, most incompetent, and most corrupt president in U.S. history, is incapable of winning in a free and fair election. Make America great again," end quote. Harvard Law School Professor Emeritus and author of the book Get Trump, Alan Dershowitz, joins me. Good evening, sir, and settle this for me. 14th Amendment, are these any chance that they could get him disqualified from the ballot?
I don't believe so. The 14th Amendment was intended to disqualify people who fought for the Civil War for the South. Now, both Biden and Trump are old, but I don't think either of them are old enough to have fought in the Civil War. If you would take this 14th Amendment absurd argument seriously, it would provide an alternative for impeachment because it doesn't deal with disqualification. It deals with who can serve, which means that this could be used against any sitting president, mayor. For example, if San Francisco declared itself, as it did, a sanctuary city, you could have somebody saying the mayor has engaged in insurrection, or Portland, Oregon, which allowed for demonstrations that became violent after the George Floyd killing. That could be deemed an insurrection. It could be used as an alternative to impeachment. Now, the Constitution is very specific about impeachment. Half of the House, two-thirds of the Senate. Do you think the framers of the 14th Amendment wanted to provide the easy alternative, which Adam Schiff today called self-enforcing, quoting Professor Lawrence Tribe, self-enforcing? Any Secretary of State could deny you and me the right to vote either for or against Donald Trump. Ultimately, this shows the greatest distrust in American democracy. It says that the people can't be trusted. It's maybe they'll vote for Trump. So we should disqualify him and let some secretaries of state decide who the next president will be. Un-American, undemocratic.
Well, as I understand it, sort of the basis of this, though, is that led a, quote, insurrection. And I find it significant that Jack Smith, and you can indict a ham sandwich, did indict former President Trump for insurrection under 18 U.S.C. 2383. I did a little research. That number one. But here's the question I have. Since Jack Smith clearly wants to get the president, I mean, he's an aggressive prosecutor, I'm wondering, was that question of insurrection put to the grand jury? And did they refuse to indict on that while they indicted on everything else? It's conceivable that a grand jury doesn't elect to indict on every charge that's put from it. And I don't know if we'll ever know, because you would have thought that Jack Smith would have gone for insurrection if he believed there was evidence. So something happened.
Well, I don't think he went for it. I don't think the grand jury refused to indict on insurrection. But even if Smith
didn't he? Why didn't he? Because everything he said indicates that he thinks that killing democracy, it was the end of democracy. January 6th, they all did. They used the word insurrection.
Because he wanted a thin indictment. What surprises me is that the prosecutor in Georgia didn't do it, because she threw everything against the kitchen wall, and she could easily have done it. But even if both of them had indicted him for insurrection, that wouldn't be enough under the 14th Amendment. I
get that, but I get that, but I find it curious. I get that. I mean, I agree with you. That wouldn't, I agree with you on the 14th Amendment.
Look,
but I don't understand.
This was not an insurrection.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
When people engaged in insurrection in the 1970s, they were blowing up universities. They were blowing up buildings. The weathermen were engaged in an insurrection. And yet some of the people who were involved in those insurrections ran for office, ran in San Francisco, ran in Los Angeles. The head of the Socialist Party who advocated insurrection ran for president of the United States.
I don't disagree with you. This is the point I'm trying to make. I don't disagree with you on that. What I don't understand is that two prosecutors who want to convict Trump so badly, and I agree with you on that whole insurrection thing. I don't believe that they don't think it's insurrection because of the things they've said. So I don't understand why they didn't indict him on it if they thought there's some missing piece there.
We may see subsequent indictments. You may talk Jack Smith into indicting him for insurrection, or Willis for indicting him insurrection. That may happen, and in my view, that would change absolutely nothing under the Constitution. Nothing can turn on an indictment. It has to be due process. Due process is not given people during the indictment phase. It's only at the trial.
I'd like just to make a point, I don't disagree that this is not a 14th Amendment issue at all. I was just sort of curious hypotheticals, what was going on with them. But Alan Dershowitz, thank you, sir. Always nice to talk to you.
Thank you.